Hey my Squidlings, it's Katie here. Welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be doing another video in my Copic class series, and that is going to be all about paper. So what is the best paper for Copics, you might ask? Well, that honestly depends on your taste. So I've got a few papers out here that I plan on testing and showing you guys. And you can kind of decide from there what you like. Of course, all of the papers that I'm able to link to, I will link in the description below. And if you buy them through that link, then I'll just get a small commission and it'll be no extra charge to you. Also, I want to let you guys know that there is a 50% off sale in my store right now. So if you go there, link will be on the screen and in the description. You'll get 50% off every single thing in my store, and that ends July 31st, so you might want to get on that because it ends pretty soon. So one of the first papers I'm going to be showing you today is the Strathmore Bristol. Any Bristol paper really works, but I prefer the Strathmore. I've used the Canson brand, but I don't know, Strathmore has this nice smooth finish. So first, of course, this is Copic, so I'm going to be testing it you know, with blending techniques and stuff like that. So I am going to grab some skin tone colors, and then I'm also going to be grabbing some other colors that I just want to make a blend out of. So we'll do the BG family, and then we're going to test it on this paper, and I'll test all these colors on the other papers too, just to have some kind of cohesiveness. So as you can tell, I have added some things to this paper. So here we're going to test feathering, here we're going to test blending, and here we're going to test how the colorless blender works. And all of the papers that I'm going to test are going to be having this stuff. So first of all, we're going to start with feathering, and I am actually going to go in with the BV00. Actually, yeah. And then we're just going to kind of blend this like I would a skin tone, except it's going to be in spherical form. And I just want to see how the markers take to this with using some heavy layers, because whenever I do skin tones, I always add a lot of layers. So I kind of just want to see how this works with all of the different layers that I put on. I feel like this marker is about out of juice. I'm going to need to refill that. I always feel like my light markers die a lot faster. Maybe it's just me. I'm going to be going back over with the RV30. And then again with the BV00. And then back again just to get another blend. I want this to be as seamless as possible. Just kind of also testing the limits of this paper. That's why I decided to do the skin tone in the feathering part. Alright, so with a lot of layers, I don't know if you can tell, but this actually did bleed up here. We're going to let it dry so you can see it a little better later. So we're actually going to move on to the blending. Now, I'm actually going to add a second square to this. Or rectangle, because this one's going to be light to dark and this one is going to be dark to light, just because some papers you can actually do both and some papers you can't. So this is going to be light to dark, so I'm going to be putting my lightest color down first, and if I go outside of the lines, well, whoops. That's pretty even coverage. Then I'm going to be going to my next color, which is B18, BG18 that is. Then I'm going to blend it out with BG15. And then I'm going to add BG78 because I really like this color for shading my BG18. Now, one thing to note about this paper is it does kind of absorb your markers. So that is one thing you want to keep in mind. Alright, so that is the light to dark blending. Now we're going to try blending dark to light. So in this one, I'm going to be taking my darkest color, which again is BG78, and I'm not going to be coloring the whole square, kind of like I did with the other one. I'm just going to be coloring a chunk of it. Then I'm going to take BG18, color right over that, try to get some kind of a blend there. And then lastly, I'm going to go in with BG15 and try to get a blend. Some papers it's easier to do than others to do dark to light. Some people like to color dark to light. I personally do. It's just a preference, but there's the difference. So this one actually looks a lot better with the base of BG15, but that's just my opinion. Now we're going to take our darkest color just because I think it would be better, and we're just gonna go right over this little square, and I'm gonna go out of the lines because I'm lazy. We're gonna let that dry, but in the meantime and in between time, we're gonna take a look at these other swatches so you can see the feathering there. It feathered a little there. You can just kind of see it leaking out. So that is probably not a good thing, but I mean, I like this paper. It's not like my 100% favorite or anything, but I do actually like this paper. So we're going to be testing the effects of the colorless blender, and over here I'm just going to make a big circle. Apologies for that screeching. Oh my. And then I'm going to make some design and see how it works. Alright, so as you can tell, the colorless blender actually works pretty well. Of course, it's not going to be an eraser, but you can actually get some really cool effects by using the colorless blender. So that is all I have to show you with the Bristol paper. Now let's move on to another paper. The next paper I'm going to show you is actually one of my newfound favorites. This is the Crescent Render paper. I've had this for a really long time, but I've only recently found out how good it is with markers. So I'm going to do a few of those lines, the circle for the feathering, and the two squares for blending, and these are not squares, they're rectangles. And this somewhat square for colorless blender. Alright, so we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did last time, except this time I'm going to start with my skin tone. So the colorless blender is okay on this paper. It doesn't really move it much, to be honest. But I think the plus side of this paper is ignore these weird doodles, but you don't get any bleed through, so you can use all sides of your paper. Alright, now we're going to be testing another paper, so woohoo! This is the paper that we all know and love, and if you haven't heard of it, this is called the Express It Blending Card. This is, I believe, made by the Copic team themselves, and it's supposed to be made for Copics, and it is nice paper. I really like it. I like the smoothness, I love the texture, and we're just gonna draw some lines down, and then we're gonna test it. I don't want to waste this paper, so I'm going to be doing these swatches kind of smallish, because this paper is expensive. Alright, I'm going to do the same drill on this. I'm going to speed it up a little bit because, I mean, it's going to get real boring. So I might voice it over, I might not, I'm not quite sure yet, but we're just going to do the same thing we've been doing. While that dries, though, I'm going to show you a little bit on the feathering. It doesn't feather much. I don't know if you can see the tops of these. That was where I just got out of the lines, but you can kind of tell it feathers a tiny, tiny bit, but that is with a lot of layers. This is probably one of the best papers as far as non-feathering goes, but you know, that's just my opinion. And as you can tell, this works really, really well with the colorless blender. It's really nice. You can't get it quite back to white, but it does make for some really cool effects. So the next paper we're going to be talking about is the paint on paper. This is, you've probably seen me do a review on this. This is probably one of my favorite papers in more recent times. So we're also going to be testing this paper with feathering, with blending, and with colorless blender. I don't feel like labeling all of them now. I'm getting lazy. So anyway, I'm gonna speed these up just like I've done the rest of them, and then I'll come back and talk to you. Alright, now that these are all done, this is again the paint on paper. The effects, they started out nice, but then they just kind of faded. I could probably go over them again. I mean, like I said, they kind of start nice. Like, look how bright. It almost goes all the way back to white. But then it just kind of fades back out. I don't know what the deal with that is. There is some feathering. Now, of course, some of this is just me going out of the lines, but like right there you can see the feathering. It's actually not that bad. You can see a little up here. But this paper takes a lot of ink, but I find that it's probably my most favorite paper right now for Copics. Again, that's just kind of dependent on who you are and what you like to do, but I really like this paper. So the next one, and the last one I'm going to test, is the manga paper. This comes in so many different forms. It's just kind of your thin paper that is marketed specifically for markers. I know Canson makes a pro layout marker paper. This is the Clairefontaine brand, but I'm just going to go ahead and rip it out and test it. So I'm going to do the same thing as I've done with every other one. I'm going to speed it up, voice it over, and then we'll talk after. Alright, so as you can see, the colorless blender has almost zero effect on this paper, and it's actually really hard to blend on this. If you're really dedicated, you can get a really nice blend, but I think the best purpose of this paper is the fact that it's got no bleed through. Like, you can see it, but it doesn't come through, and the fact that you don't use very much ink. If I were to use this in a practical sense, I would definitely just use it as a mock sheet for, you know, color studies or something like that. I would never use this on a full illustration just because I don't really like the blending that I get on this. I like my marker works to be pretty blended, so. Alright, so there were a lot of swatches done on 5 different papers, and keep in mind, these are the papers that I would go to. There are a million other papers out there, and I'm sure there are a million other videos on different papers. These are the 5 papers that I have here that I would choose, that I have chosen before in prior illustrations. So personally, I'm not going to rate these or anything because, again, it just is up to taste. But the crescent render paper as a sketchbook works really well for Copics. I like it in that I don't feel like I need to make it a final illustration. I like it as a sketchbook. It's great. Would I use it as an illustration paper? Probably not, but I do like it for testing ideas. The release in manga paper, again, I would just use this for testing, kind of deciding what color schemes to go with. I would not use this as a final illustration, but it is nice to have because it uses hardly any ink. The expressive blending card, expensive, worth every penny, honestly. And I really like them. I think they're great. Copic makes them, so of course, you know, it's going to be good with the markers. Blending's great. The only thing I really hate about this paper is the white specks. Let me pick this up and try to show you. I don't know if you can see that, but like in this blending, there are a lot of little white specks, and that is one of the things that kind of turns me off to this paper. Other than that though, if you can get behind it and get past it, that's a really good paper, and yes, I would use it on illustrations, and I have before. Bristol paper. This is a cheaper alternative, I think, to some other more expensive papers. It does have some feathering, but the blending is absolutely great. The colorless blender effects are pretty nice. It does use a little bit of ink, I find, but I really like this. Is what I've used on so many pieces, and I do love it, so it is a really solid paper. And then, of course, my favorite, and this is the one I would recommend, is the paint on paper. This is actually a mixed media paper, but I find it works really well for what I like to do in my markers. It blends really great, both dark to light and light to dark. It has some amazing colorless blender effects, and the blending and feathering is just, I mean, it's got minimal blending, and it does use a lot of ink. I think that's the only downfall for me, but other than that, I really like that. So again, I will leave links to all of these different papers in the description below. Check them out. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite Copic paper is down in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to join our cute little squid pod if you haven't already to keep updated on new videos, plus the little bell so you can get notified when I do upload some videos. And until next time, guys, toodaloo!